U.S. Ambassador to Turkey and Special Envoy for Syria Tom Barrack announced early on Saturday that Israel and Syria had agreed to a ceasefire. At least 32 Palestinians were killed as Israeli forces opened fire on crowds of people headed to a food distribution site in Khan Yunis.
Russia launched hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles at Ukraine overnight, killing at least one person and injuring several others.
U.S. Ambassador to Turkey and Special Envoy for Syria announced early on Saturday that Syria and Israel had agreed to a ceasefire. It comes after Israeli forces carried out several attacks against Syria, including in the capital Damascus, in what it called military interventions to protect the Druze minority. Clashes between armed Druze groups and Bedouin clans erupted on Sunday in the southern province of Sueda. Government forces nominally intervened to restore peace but ended up taking the Bedouin side against the Druze. Israel responded by launching dozens of airstrikes on convoys of government fighters and even targeted the Syrian Defense Ministry headquarters in central Damascus. The fighting came to a brief halt following a U.S.-brokered truce between Syria's government and Druze groups on Wednesday. Druze militias were responsible for overseeing internal security as government forces pulled out, but instead clashes with Bedouins flared again. Syrian interim President Ahmed al-Shara said special forces will be deployed to Sueda to break up clashes and resolve the conflict on the ground. The UN says that clashes have killed hundreds, displaced tens of thousands, and severely disrupted essential services like water and electricity. At least 32 Palestinians were killed as Israeli forces opened fire at crowds of Palestinians headed to a food distribution site. The attack occurred some 3 kilometers away from the Israeli-backed US-led humanitarian operation, which aims to replace traditional UN systems. Eyewitnesses say Israeli soldiers fired warning shots near the crowds before indiscriminately shooting at them. Israeli troops reportedly used machine guns mounted on tanks and drones, which encircled the crowds. They were headed to the aid hub in the southern city of Khan Yunis, operated by US-based company the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. The GHF says it has served millions of meals with no incidents of violence on its sites, though there have been numerous previous reports of Israeli troops firing at people en route to the sites. Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry says the bodies of the 32 victims were transferred to the Nasser hospital, as well as roughly 70 others who sustained injuries. Local health officials say 18 others were killed in separate incidents as Israeli forces carried out airstrikes on Gaza City in the north of the enclave.
Russia launched hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles at Ukraine overnight, killing at least one person and injuring several others. The Black Sea port city of Odessa was struck by 20 drones and a missile, sparking a fire in an apartment block. 5 people were rescued from the building, including one woman who later on died. A series of explosions were also heard in Pavlorad in the Dnipro region, damaging critical infrastructure and a residential building. According to local authorities, it was the largest attack on the city since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion. Moscow has been recently intensifying its long-range attacks on Ukraine, often firing more drones in a single night than it did during entire months in 2024. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry said it shot down 71 Ukrainian drones overnight, 13 of which were reportedly shot down as they approached Moscow. Brazil's former president Jair Bolsonaro has been ordered to wear an ankle monitor. The development came as federal police conducted searches at his home and his party's headquarters in the capital, Brasilia. The Brazilian president is currently on trial, accused of leading an alleged attempt to stage a coup to overturn the 2022 election, in which he was defeated by left-wing President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Bolsonaro has described the trial as, quote, a witch hunt, echoing a term used by Trump when he came to his South American allies' defense last week. Trump imposed a 50% import tax on Brazil, directly tying the tariffs to Bolsonaro's trial.